Mr. Kant, very warm welcome to this gathering. Thank you very much for making the time. The headlines say 8% growth in India for the current year. Many people still have a hard time believing that number, but tell our audience how that has been possible.
So Siddharth, I think it's about three quarters of 8.4% plus, really. And that really demonstrates that India has been a very resilient economic powerhouse. In fact, according to IMF, India will be responsible for 20% of the economic global expansion this year. And, we are doing this at a point of time when UK, Germany, Japan, all are in recession right now. And we are the fifth largest economy, but by 27 end, I expect India to surpass Japan and Germany to become the third largest economy in the world. And this growth, to my mind, is a consequence of four key factors. First is the vast number of structural reforms that have been carried out. GST, which has now led to, from 6.8 million to about 15 million plus taxpayers. So your tax base is increased very substantially, but it's growing year on year at about 15% plus. A modern bankruptcy law for the first time in India, which has brought in, to my mind, a completely new credit culture in India. Then many middle class people had got badly treated by builders in India, so you have the Real Estate Regulation Act. And you have the scrapping of vast number of rules, regulation, procedures. No country in the world has scrapped 1,500 laws, which India has done. And fifthly, to my mind, the fact that your corporate tax, the government gave away 1.45 crore rupees so that we could have our tax rate and benchmark it amongst the world's best. So that's the structural reforms bit. The second bit is the vast amount of digitization that which India has done, from digital identity to bank accounts, opening 550 million bank accounts, then linking it up with Aadhaar and mobile through a massive drive, doing cashless, paperless credit, then seeing a vast number of young startups actually taking wealth creation because of that to tier 2, tier 3 cities. And all these new startups, Zerodha, Grow Up Stock, are all a creation of that. And then new startups like GoDigit and Acco, which give insurance in less than 1 minute. It's unheard of in any country of the world. So digitization is the second component. And the third is infrastructure, vast amount of infrastructure. So in the last 9 years, India has built 40 million houses. 40 million houses is like making one full Australia in India. It's more than the population of Australia. We've made 110 million toilets, which is like making one full Germany in India. And yeah. I mean, people laugh at it, but that's to understand the size and scale of it. We've given piped water connection to 253 million citizens of India, which is like giving piped water connection to every single individual of Brazil. And we've made 80,000 kilometers of roads in the last 9 years. So, those of you who travel would realize that actually our infrastructure in terms of road, expressway, airports, etc. is now better than Europe. And the capex spend of the government has moved up from 1% to 4%. So that's huge, huge. And the fourth bit is the huge work done for sustainability, climate action, to do 187 gigawatt of renewable, bring down the price of renewable from 21 rupees to less than 2 rupees through transparent processes, to provide electric connection to 30 million houses, and to ensure that about 110 million women in India get cooking gas connection and do not have to burn wood for their cooking purposes, and or to be able to really drive climate action in a very big way. It's been enormous. So we've been doing it in all other countries. Doing this greening has been at a green premium. What Bill Gates says, that when you move from fossil fuel to green, there is a premium to be paid. But what India has demonstrated is that because of the size and scale of India, you can do this greening, move from fossil fuel to green at a green discount. So in all these areas, we've actually brought down the price in each one. Like procurement of LED, 367 million LED procured. The price of LED fell by 200%. We procured about 5,600 electric buses. The OPEX part of the price, the OPEX expenditure of the electric buses was about 20% lower than the fossil fuel, than the combustion engine buses. And therefore, my belief is simply because of the size and scale of what we are doing, we are able to do it at much lower price and really transform India. And when we transform India, we are transforming lives of not merely the 1.4 billion people of India, but of the next 4 to 5 billion people of the world who will be moving from poverty to middle class.
Absolutely, and that's a brilliant answer to that question, where if any of you were wondering where that 8% came from, this is the reason that that 8% has come about. The Modi government could also be called a government of builders, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. Not only do we have a new parliament, but we have projects which we are seeing getting inaugurated pretty much every day. But I want to touch upon one issue that you yourself have been engaged with. These are the skeletons of average middle class Indian people's dreams to possess a house. Hundreds and thousands of incomplete apartments. Again, a legacy that this government inherited. You've been spending time on that. Give a sense to our audience as to where do we stand in resolving that and ensuring that un logon ko bhi apna ek ghar mil jaye.
So, government had asked me to chair a committee whose report I had given about a month and a half back. And I think many state governments are now implementing it, at least the UP government, because when you go from Delhi to Noida towards the new airport which is getting constructed, you'll see a lot of incomplete houses. We found a range of solutions for that. Very practical solutions. So the UP, Mr. Yogi Adityanath found it very feasible to implement it. He's gone ahead and implemented all of them. And I think you'll see all of those houses getting fully completed, and those houses actually getting, reaching the middle class for whom they were meant for. So the biggest beneficiary of that report will be the actual house owner who's not been able to get his houses for many, many years. These houses will get completed very shortly, and those which are completed will actually reach the middle class, irrespective of the fact that the buyer was not giving, the builder was not giving possession. We found a range of solutions for that and suggested.
And that will be perhaps in the range of thousands of apartments?
No, that will be in terms of several lakhs. In that region, about almost 12 to 13 lakhs of people will benefit from it.
Let's hear it for that. This has been a problem that's been there for many years now, and that too is getting solved. Let's move on from the real estate sector to talk about the private sector in India. 10 years ago, crisis of confidence, NPA issue, many companies going under, a regulation that was frequently changing. There was no policy certainty. Today, when a lot of analysts say that the private sector is lagging behind the government in investing, is that a fair assessment? Do you share that opinion? And if you were to, what would you say to leading lights of corporate India?
So the country had several challenges. We were in the fragile five. We have moved on to big, in a very short period, we've come into the top five. We were in the fragile five because we had a twin balance sheet problem. The bank balance sheets were bad. The corporate balance sheet was even worse. And we had a twin deficit problem both the fiscal deficit and the current deficit were both challenges. The corporate balance sheet are in top-class condition right now, and the bank balance sheet, the Indian banks have never been in better condition. In fact, my view is that India's private debt to GDP share is still low. It's at about 57, 58% compared to almost about 180% in United States and 160% in many other parts of European countries. So there is a need to do more debt to the private sector of India in a systematic, transparent manner. And my view is that private sector capex will kick in now, and India will be on a long trajectory of growth for the next decade because of the private sector, not the government. The government has done its bit by putting in capex at the time when it was required, because that was the COVID period. We couldn't have expected private sector to put in money. Many of them did. But you will now see with this really growing and expanding balance sheets of the private sector, capacity utilization crossing about 75%, I'm very optimistic that private capex will kick in, and once it kicks in, that virtuous cycle of growth will be there for the next 1 decade for India.
Once private sector kicks in a really strong, meaningful manner, do you think it will address one of the bigger societal issues that we are seeing, which is the need for creating more and more jobs? Employment is being created, but because of the sheer number, it's a big issue. Do you see that will happen because the government has limited capacity in adding jobs?
So, why I say the private capex will kick in is because, when we had this challenge in the COVID era, there were two options before the government. The government could have taken a consumer-led approach, and which is to provide more resources to the consumers, but that normally tends to be inflationary. Packages across the world have been inflationary. India was very tight on those packages. It put money straight into the bank accounts of beneficiaries.
Did you agree with that?
I totally agree, because the government decided that it would rather be a capex-led growth. This takes a little more time, but in the long run, a capex-led growth is far more enriching for the country over a period of time. And that's why I'm very confident that private capex will kick in. And the second thing which is happening is very good, is that the government is the policy measures, if you look at it. I was involved, actually, I drove the production-linked incentive scheme. So the government is getting into sunrise areas of growth. Quite often in India, we've lagged behind, whether it was 2G, 3G, 4G, we've lagged years behind. 5G, we've moved forward. We've moved forward in AI. This new 10,000 crore package of procuring GPUs so that you have the computing power of India to blend both digital public infrastructure and artificial intelligence together to technologically leapfrog in many of these, or electric vehicles or battery storage. These are going to be the sunrise areas of growth of the future, which will drive India's growth story. They will get you the big ticket, big spending money, the big earnings. They are the areas where you need to penetrate global markets. It will not be your traditional, you will not get value in traditional sectors of just food, agriculture, textiles. The world moves on in every 3 to 4 years, and you have to catch up into those new cycles of growth.
Quick interjection there. You mentioned 5G, but when it comes to 5G, the networks and the operators, if you were to ask them, would perhaps tell us privately that monetization still seems to be a distant dream.
Yeah, monetization will happen. In India, we must understand it's a size and scale market. The margin is thin, but it's a lot of size and scale. And therefore, I think I'm quite sure that all these companies, Mr. Sunil Mittal is sitting here. His balance sheet is very good right now.
We'll hear from him.
Yeah. I mean,
I think Mr. Kant is setting the stage for the next
every award function you go to, the only award of the best CEO goes to Mr. Sunil Mittal because of his balance sheet. So,
no, but before I let you go, just one quick point on PLI. How much more can the government continue to support the PLI scheme? Because there have been critics. There are people, including a famous economist now in America, who said that money was being thrown down the drain in this scheme.
So, first of all, Siddharth, we must be very clear that India can't grow only on the back of services. India must actually drive on all cylinders. It must grow on manufacturing, it must grow on services, it must grow on very sustainable urbanization, it must grow on agriculture productivity. The challenge for India is that 42% of your population is dependent on agriculture. You need to take this population away from agriculture and put it into manufacturing or into good urbanization. Now, manufacturing will happen if you're able to penetrate global markets. Every time India has grown, actually, if you look at the history, India has grown at 8 to 9%. But every time it's grown when exports have grown and when we've been able to penetrate global markets. And, unless and until you don't have size and scale of manufacturing, it will not be possible to do. So what does PLI do? The PLI says that we'll support you year after year for 5 years. But you keep meeting your production targets. First year 15%, next year 25%, third year 35%. If you don't do this, you won't get the benefit. But if you get that size and scale, you'll become a global player. So it's giving you a carrot, but it's giving you that carrot to achieve very high production targets and making you a global player. And it says we won't extend it beyond 5 years. So within the 5 years, you become a global champion. It's a scheme for making Indian companies think big and become global champions to penetrate global markets. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely, and there are champions from that sector here as well. As I let you go, you have worn so many hats in your career, almost 5 decades now. Are you planning to organize a G20 again sometime soon in India?
No. Well, not G20. I just want to improve my golfing handicap now.
Okay. All the best for that, Mr. Kant. Thank you very much. As always, a pleasure having you here with us. A round of applause for Mr. Amitabh Kant.